Welcome to Community in Code, a podcast about the humans behind the commits. I'm here today with Roger Williams. I'm your host, Chris Reynolds, and Roger Williams comes to us from Kinsta. He's a community manager, and we met at PressConf, where we kind of invented hashtag VegPress, and yeah, but basically it just involved going to the same place the whole week.
Absolutely. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Good. I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This is a slightly different format for me. You know, I've got a little show that I do with Kinsta called Kinsta Talks, and I don't even really know what the format is for that show. So I'm excited to be on this one and kind of experiment and play around and see where we go with this.
Yeah. What do you do at Kinsta? What is a community manager?
Oh man, it's a great question. So we kind of created the position for me last year because I was doing outbound sales, and my boss at the time realized that if I kind of maybe went upstream or up level a little bit in terms of the conversations and made them less salesy and more community or more just like meeting people and like collecting feedback, that there was a whole lot for us to gain from that because we, at Kinsta, we've never been like the most forward-facing company in terms of like having lots of people at events and things like that. And so we kind of really kickstarted that. And so there's so many things. And the problem I have is I like to boil the ocean, which, is not something you can actually do. But I try. And so, it started off with, I was going to a lot of WordCamps, meeting people at WordCamps. I was actually, able to meet some prospects and things like that and hand that off to the sales team as were, but also just like getting feedback about the product, what people liked, what they didn't like, passing that on to the product teams. And then last year around WordCamp US, I started interviewing the people who were going to be presenting. And just really short, like 5-minute, 10-minute little interviews. Hey, what are you talking about? Who should go to your talk? Should they have anything prepared before they go? And I did a whole bunch of those. And then when I went to WordCamp US, like the whole time people kept approaching me going, hey man, I love your show. I'd love to be on it. All this stuff. And I was like, whoa, okay, I guess, maybe there's something here. And so I started doing like this regular kind of interview thing where I'm just talking to all types of people across the WordPress ecosystem, sometimes people outside of WordPress, trying to be like definitely open source focused. And then, and then there's just a whole bunch of little things that I do inside of Kinsta as well to like just help us understand that there's a WordPress community and we need to be a part of it. And, just all that type of stuff. So it's a really fun job. And I'm pinching myself every day.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. It sounds very much like what I feel like I've been doing in developer relations at Pantheon for the last few months since I moved over to the DevRel team.
Excellent.
Yeah, I just they pay me to do this thing that I've kind of wanted to and been doing for a really long time. So yeah, your LinkedIn tells me that you were at University of East Anglia for a bit for a study abroad program. I too was at University of East Anglia for a semester. The story I tell about my experience in Norwich was the voice that Monty Python does, the old lady voice that they do.
Yes.
I was in the city center in Norwich, and I heard that voice, and I thought for sure somebody was just quoting Monty Python. And I turned around, and no, it was actually a little old lady making that voice. What brought you to Norwich? What was your experience like in that study abroad? This is total segue, but I happened to notice this on your LinkedIn, and I had to bring it up.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. All right, UEA. Wow. Talk about a trip down memory lane. So my junior year of university, I did the exchange program.
Was it a full year or just a semester?
I did a full year.
Nice.
Yeah, so CU Boulder is where I did my undergrad, and they have a program, an exchange program with UEA. And so the difference between study abroad and exchange is that with exchange, you actually qualify into the program, and now you just pay your regular tuition, and somebody from England basically lives on my tuition, and then I go and live on, back then they had just implemented $1,000 a year for
Yeah.
university, and everybody lost their mind. And I'm just sitting there laughing like, wow, okay. So like crazy story, like the whole impetus of going there. I was doing like a humanities degree at Boulder. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to be doing. I knew I wanted to go study abroad. And then, but the problem is I don't speak any other languages,
Right.
and I'm very lazy. And so, so yeah, I was like, I think I can do English. I think I can pull that
Yep.
off.
Yep.
So that was kind of the qualifier on my end. Also, as a humanities major at Boulder, you have like a primary and a secondary focus, basically a major and a minor within the major. So I had philosophy and economics, or actually I had philosophy. I hadn't determined what I wanted to do for a secondary yet. And when I was looking at UEA, it was a little bit slimmer options, right? CU is a huge university. UEA is a good sized university, still nowhere near the same size, but so they had philosophy, and then they had economics as an option. And traditionally, the humanities program at Boulder did not have economics as an option
Sure.
for primary or secondary focuses. And so I actually went to the dean of the economics school and convinced her to allow me, for the first time in the school's history, to have economics as a secondary, so that when I went and studied abroad, or studied exchange, I was able to get full credit. Wow, so that's like the really boring aspect of having gone to UEA.
Yeah.
The exciting part of going to the UEA was when I went there, it was 97, 98. They had just
I think I was there
built-
probably the year after, or maybe a year or two after you. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So they had just built some new dorms. I feel like
Yeah.
it was to the north, right? And those
I
were
know exactly what you're talking about.
okay, those are the computer science dorms, and they all had like T1 connections in the rooms. And so this is where it actually got fun, is that I was in a dorm room or dorm building with all computer science people. And 1997 was the year that Unreal, the first Unreal came
Okay.
out.
Yep.
I want to say Quake 2 came out that year.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And like a whole bunch of other like groundbreaking 3D games. So we played a ton of, and you were able to connect to the internet, right, with the T1.
Yep.
So we were
dorm-wide LAN parties. Yep. Got
oh
it.
my god! And also like playing across the seas and like dealing with horrible lag times. But so I got that was like my first. I was kind of a gamer before that, but like I really got into gaming that year a bit. But I also like the club scene in the UK was really the reason that I went to school there. I had gotten into the rave scene when I first went to university in Boulder. And then the attraction was, hey, in England, you don't have to go to these fields, although they have that, but you can just go down to a regular club and they have amazing DJs and amazing music. I saw Chemistry and Storm play like an empty nightclub one time. That was amazing. I saw Ronnie Size play The End in London, and really had a great time. My one rule that I put onto myself that year was I was not going to hang out with any Americans. And it was great. Like I hung out with all English and Europeans, and really like dove into the culture. And oh man, yeah, UEA. There's another connection that we have with UEA or Norwich is John Blackburn,
Okay. Yeah.
the security
Yeah,
core
I know
committer.
John.
Yeah. Okay. So he lives in Norwich.
Why did I not know that? I've known John for a while. I worked with him at Human Made, and I didn't know that he lives in Norwich.
Yeah. So what took you to UEA?
Basically the same.
Okay.
My girlfriend at the time, and also my current partner, both went on the same study abroad program to India, and I looked at a couple things and I was like, no, England is good. I want to go to England anyway. The thing was like I had gone to Italy in high school for like a 2 week exchange program thing.
Okay.
And I was kind of thinking of that, but I was like, because I know a little bit of Italian, I figured I could probably, pick it up again.
Yeah.
But I was like, but I've already been there. So like looking at the different programs, and it was a very similar thing to your university. We had a similar, it wasn't an exchange program, it was a study abroad program, but it was the same thing. You pay your normal tuition and you just go there.
Sweet.
And I just I wanted to go to England. I thought maybe I could use that as an excuse to kind of go other places in the UK or whatever. That never really happened. I went
Yeah.
to London a few times, but my ambitions were a bit more ambitious than reality.
Sure.
I was in a dorm that did not have internet. I was
Ah.
in a big old one of their old buildings. Probably even maybe would reckon is it kind of like looked like a weird kind of Aztec pyramid, kind of slanted.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I'm sure you have that image. There's actually an apartment complex that's in Salt Lake City that looks like it. We were driving by it yesterday. I was like, my dorm in England looked almost exactly like that. I when I got there, I was super homesick and had a little bit of culture shock. I hung
Sure.
out at a there was a dorm that was all American exchange students or American study abroad students, and
Okay.
I hung out at a party with them once. And there's a bunch of people from my school that went there, and so I was hanging out with them. And then after that night, I was like, okay, I need to not do this. I need to figure out how to not, because this is just going to be comfort, and this is just going to be like the same thing that I would do at home. If I'm going to be here, I need to be here. So what I did is early on in the semester they had like, I don't know, they got all sorts of clubs and stuff, and there's like a demo kind of thing where you like talk to the different things and figure out what's going on. So there's a Deviant Society that I joined, which is basically like the goth kids
Yeah.
as a club, which was amazing.
Yeah.
And the goth kids as a club actually had a goth night at a local pub, Fat Polly's. So I was going to Fat Polly's probably every week. And then there was another one where there's a radio station on campus, super tiny signal, you could barely get it across campus.
Yeah.
But I was really interested in DJing, and I thought, well, this is my only chance, right, to get on a college radio. So I did that, and what was cool about that is the guy that DJ'd right before me played a lot of like white label UK garage,
Yeah.
and so I would just go early and listen to like the tail end of his set, and then hang out with him for a little bit, and exposed to all sorts of like underground stuff that I wouldn't have really heard otherwise, and developed a love for UK garage and the sort of like two-step kind of
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're gonna stay on this for a while because so UEA is where I learned about drum and bass, like and like really learned about it. And it's funny. The origin story actually goes to Wipeout 2097. I don't know if you ever played that on PlayStation 2.
I don't think so.
Okay, it's an amazing racing game. It's probably not as good as I remember it, but the amazing
Right.
part of it was it had a really great soundtrack. Like it had
Right.
Prodigy, Chemical Brothers, a whole bunch of songs, and then it had a Photex song.
Okay.
And I remember being like, "Ooh, I really like this," and somebody was like, "Oh yeah, well that's drum and bass," and I was like, "Okay, well this is what I like," and so I really like I started DJing. I was walking around campus with records and had friends with turntables in all the dorms. I was no good, but I really enjoyed it, and yeah, oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, yeah, garage.
Yeah, so
Yeah, yeah.
I watched a movie on the plane
Okay.
called GMT, and it was about a band that played drum and bass.
Okay.
And as soon as I landed, I'm like, where do I get more of this? So I immediately went to the Castle Mall, which,
Okay.
for people that don't know, weren't in Norwich ever, is a mall that is literally underneath the castle. Like there's the castle, and then like underneath it is a shopping mall.
Yeah.
And I went to the music store and I found the soundtrack, and it was one of the guy from so Frou Frou is Imogen Heap and Guy Sigsworth, and Guy Sigsworth has done a bunch of other work with other people, but he was basically the producer and the main sound engineer for most of the that soundtrack. So I kind of like
Okay.
I and then I yeah I got that, and then I got a bunch of like compilation things. It's like yeah that was my so it's very similar. Like I got there, I
Nice.
landed, I'm like okay, where do I get more of this thing, and yeah yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, no, a very formative experience for me. You know, I had traveled abroad a lot before then. I was super fortunate growing up playing ice hockey. I got to go on a traveling
Mm,
team that went to the Soviet Union right before it fell. Went to China in the
wow.
90s. And then when I was in England, actually, the team that I had played for needed an assistant coach because they were doing a tour to Eastern Europe. And so I got to travel with them. I went to Poland and Prague, and oh, that was amazing. Yeah, super great experience. I cannot recommend that people travel enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and um yeah, my family and I we took the kids to out of the country for the first time. I went to Japan over the summer last
Oh,
year. And that was the first time they had left. We've gone, done road trips. We've gone to, different places in the States, but that was the first time that we went outside the country. And I think that, I mean, my daughter still talks about it. My son still talks about it. And yeah, I mean, more of that. Like, it's really is, especially at a certain age where like, well, for me, and as a teenager, you think you know everything and you think you've seen everything, and being able to just go someplace else and understand that like no, actually, you don't know anything.
you don't know
Like
anything.
there's so much more to human experience than just what you see like even on TV or like in your daily life. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no. Imagine for a moment that you don't know everything. You know, I think that there was a really good oh gosh, I think it's called Lights On as an audiobook that was just produced by Sam Harris's wife. And anyway, it's about consciousness being a fundamental aspect of the universe. And at one point, she's interviewing this physicist, and they're like, "Well, but other people are saying this, and they're saying that that can't really happen." And he's like, "Well, imagine just for a moment that you don't know everything." And I think that's what travel gives you, right? Is like
Hmm.
that insight of like, wow, I had no idea that first of all you could even eat food like this,
Hmm.
or that like that even a culture could like operate, a way a different culture does. So, yeah, no, definitely travel, absolutely,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah, for
awesome
sure.
that that's such a small world.
Yeah, I know, right? Like I was it was just hilarious. It's like you both studied at University of East Anglia. Really?
What did you study while you were there?
I did some English classes. I did a writing class, and I did a theater class. I did comedy and the absurd in theater,
Whoa.
which was awesome. They had a pretty good theater program. So I was kind of leaning into that stuff, and then like yeah, English and writing stuff. I read like I one of the other memories I have of being at UEA was that I was studying and working harder than I think I had previously in college, and also partying harder than I think I ever had. Like, and that just seemed like that was the norm. Like that was kind of what everybody did. Is that like you study hard and then you party hard,
Yeah,
and like they had a much more flexible. Like you weren't in classes every day. It was like 2 or 3 days a week or something. So that
yeah,
meant that I could actually do the work and like read an entire book in 2 weeks or whatever, which is not a thing for me. Like I'm not a fast reader.
yeah.
So like there's a literature class, a modernist literature class that I took, then and we were basically reading a book a week or a book every 2 weeks, and I yeah I was it was a lot of fun. It was pretty hard, and I would definitely recommend like it. It was a lot of there's a lot of people at our university, my university, really pushed people to do a semester abroad,
Oh,
and like so almost everybody did it.
nice.
And there was a lot of different options and a lot of people, and I can't speak for anyone else's sort of experience, but like for me, like it wasn't any less for it being in an English speaking country, because I really felt like I tried to immerse myself in the culture and figure out what it is, like what that culture was even.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but um, but yeah, I is very very good experience.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How much did so my first impression of the UEA campus was, did they build this as a set for a Doctor Who episode? Because the concrete, like the just
Yeah.
the absurdist Bauhaus, like
Yeah.
concrete just everywhere, and like the library was like on stilts and the
It was
walkways.
yeah, it was a pretty gloomy campus. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, well, and that whole getting there was a whole thing for me too, because I left my dorm, and I think I maybe even got to the airport and then realized that my ticket was still in my room. So I
Oh,
missed my flight, and I was supposed to fly over with someone else that was in the program with me. So she ended up getting on the flight and going over, and so I went later. So by the time I got there, and like, you probably did this too. You land in Heathrow, you get on a bus, and then you get on a train, and then you're on the train, and then you take another bus, and then like you're walking, and I've got like tons of stuff with me, and I'm like, I get to the campus, I'm like, it's night, it's like, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night or something. There's the night watchman, and I'm like, I don't know anything. Like, I don't know where to go. I don't have any people. I like barely know like what I'm doing.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So yeah, that first just finding my way to the dorm and then figuring out where I'm going to stay for the next few months was its own sort of. It began a long tradition for me of sort of airline horror
Oh
stories
no.
that
Oh,
I
oh no.
like. I have a history, like people who I know who have followed me on the internet. Like I've had a bad luck with flights in various different ways, and this was the first time that I sort of screwed things up.
Oh
But this
shoot.
was probably my own fault
Sure.
more than like bad luck in the airport.
Generally.
Mm.
Well, that sounds like an issue. But you know what? I think one interesting thing that kind of ties into maybe what we want to talk about here is I was obviously around a bunch of computer science people, and they had a variety of different interests, but there was a strong interest about the internet and the web,
Yeah, for sure.
and that really. Even though I wasn't doing a computer science degree, I was fascinated with the web. Obviously, I was using it as a resource tool and goofing off tool and all that stuff. But I was also starting to kind of see, how this is going to start shaping the world moving forward. And I totally, looking back on it, I missed so many opportunities. Like there were multiple people that were like, "Hey, I want to start building websites for companies. Do you want to do this with me?" And and I just wasn't in the right frame of mind to go, yes, absolutely. But I have, those experiences have taught me now to say yes more often and
Hmm.
to be, more excited about trying things out. But you just think back to then, and we didn't even have Google back then. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
I don't even think Alta Vista was really even a thing at that point. It was still directories and Yahoo,
Hmm. Hmm.
DMOZ, and
Hmm.
then and then everything's just exploded since then. What a wild
One of
little.
the so I my first internet exposure pre this trip was through like
Sure.
BBS's. I was on BBS's before I was on the internet. I was
Okay.
paying for BBS's before I was on the internet.
Okay.
And when I was in UEA, me and a friend had like a chat room that we hung out in. But he added a chat bot, and it was one of these chat bots that was supposed to be, and this is like again 99 maybe 2000.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be like an AI chatbot, where in which you could talk to it and it would remember conversations and then it would talk back to you and try to form coherent sentences. Um, and we fed it so much garbage that we said that the bot just went insane. Like it just started spewing out the same sort of like if you've been on the internet for long enough, there's like the Horse eBooks Twitter account where it's just a Twitter account that just spews like random like just
Okay.
internet garbage basically. It's like old school like AI, right?
Okay.
Before
Yeah.
like large language models. Um, and so when like ChatGPT and things came out, and when I learned that, the way that they trained these large language models is from internet data, it's like, okay, well, I have personal experience with what happens when you feed something like this too much garbage, you get garbage out. So it obviously, like, just from the baseline, set my expectations pretty low. Like,
Yeah.
I know that if you feed it garbage, you're going to get garbage, and so like you have to go into it with like a base level of sort of distrust.
Sure.
And obviously now like AI is ruling the world, and everybody is scared for their jobs and whatever. But like the fundamental truth is you still kind of feed it like an internet worth of Reddit posts and shit posts and like
Sure.
like
Sure.
just and maybe out of it it's got enough filtering stuff, and it is a valuable tool, but it's not always right. Like it's still going to be basing it off of the whatever garbage it was sent at some point that somebody said somewhere. Maybe like it's a predictive model. It's not a fact checking thing.
Absolutely. No, I think, and we're jumping all over the place here, but talking about AI, it's something I talk about and think about every single day. I
Yeah.
do believe that there's overhype happening, as with all technologies. Everything gets overhyped, and the people selling it are the one that's going to benefit the most from it. I think that this idea, though, that it's going to take all of our jobs, nothing about it yet has convinced me of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Right? I can see where it helps me maybe do my job a little faster. It helps me be more creative. It helps me think of things that I haven't necessarily contemplated, just because there's only so much time in the day, and so I see it as kind of like a supercharging type of thing. I think the analysis that I always go back to is it's a really fancy spell check grammar checker,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so whatever you give it, as you're saying, with this garbage in, garbage out, right? It's the same thing, right? You've got to give it something good to work with, and then you also need to know about its limitations.
Yeah.
And at certain points, it's okay. I've used this tool enough. Now it's time for me to just be me or whatever. Oh man, thanks for the trip down memory lane. That was crazy.
Yeah.
I think about UEA often, but I don't meet many people that have gone there.
Yeah, I same. I mean, I every once in a while I come across somebody on LinkedIn that has it in their profile. But I don't know that I've actually ever been able to sort of like reminisce on our early formative UEA days.
Yeah,
Yeah, switching gears a little bit. We talked a little bit before about working remotely.
yeah.
I've been working remotely for, geez, probably close to 20-ish years, I guess. Like
Okay,
after graduation, came out to Salt Lake. I did some retail stuff. I ended up doing like tech support for a few years. I deliberately avoided getting into the business of making websites
okay.
because I really liked making websites, and I had friends. I had friends who went to art school and then went on into the world to be artists,
Okay.
and they hated everything because they like design work for them was boring, and it took all the creativity and all of the joy out of making art out of their daily lives. And I didn't want that to be the case for me in making websites.
Yeah.
And then one day, sometime after my son was born, I was like, I don't want to be. My dad was always sort of working, and I'm not very available, and so I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to
Yeah.
be more available for my kids than my dad was.
Yeah.
So how can I do that? Well, I do know how to make websites, so maybe we can try to figure out a way to make this work. And that ultimately led to a long path that ended up at WordPress, ended up in agencies, ended up at Pantheon, and here we are.
Yeah.
So I've been working remotely before it was called remote work because I was
Sure.
just working at home making websites,
Yeah. Yeah.
and now it's a whole thing, and I have a lot of very I've worked in good remote environments where there's a lot of asynchronous and like room for people being at different sort of time zones. And I've worked at other remote environments where you're expected to still clock in at 9 o'clock business time in East Coast or whatever, and because that's just 9 to 5 is operating hours.
Yeah.
What is your path to remote work, and what are sort of the takeaways that you've had in your journey?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm not quite 20 years. I'm probably like 15. My last office job was in 2009. I was selling content delivery network system solutions for Level 3 Communications, which is a very large but mostly unknown telecommunications company that built most of the fiber backbone across the US.
I worked in
Okay.
internet. Like I did the tech support I was doing was for MSN for a while.
Yeah.
Um, and then I worked at Quest, which then became CenturyLink. It was before it was CenturyLink, but like the phone system. So like
Uh,
I am very familiar. Yeah.
well, and now Quest became CenturyLink, then it became Lutron, not
Okay.
Lutron, something like that. And then I think it just bought Level 3. And then I just saw that AT&T has now purchased their fiber system. So it's
Okay.
all going to be AT&T again, but before we're dead, it'll all be AT&T again. So that was my last office job, and that was a very good. I think that was a very good last office job because that was a super corporate job. They were using some crazy ERP management system. It took 2 weeks to create a quote to sell CDN, just to give you an indicator of like how little I was selling because, like, by then, people were able to get CDN much faster. Anyway, I left that. I got fired from that job, and then I tried to figure out what I wanted to do. I started building websites. Finally, I finally took. I was like, I like doing websites. I don't want to build them. I started building them because I had worked at an agency that specialized in backlinks. And so the whole job was just, going out and finding backlinks and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there the whole time and I'm looking at the clients' websites and I'm like, yeah, we're getting all these backlinks for them, but their on site SEO is garbage. Like, there's not even an H1 tag, like just basics. And so that's when I realized I was like, oh, I should just do this. Like, well, I'll just keep all the money, like why am I working for people doing this? And so I did that for like 8 years or so, and managed to burn myself out. Tried to do too many things. I was doing social media. I was doing paid
Mm-hmm.
ads,
Mm-hmm.
and I also was not delegating. So like I was not a good agency person. And then and I was like, you know what? And that was fully remote. And the kind of the interesting side note to that whole part in 2014, my wife and I hit the road full time, and we traveled in an RV across the U.S. for 6 years. And
Wow.
so, yeah, and so we were working remote doing that. And she actually walked away from her full time career in the aerospace industry. We were just burnt out of Phoenix. She was burnt out of that job. We hit the road. She started doing like some freelancing, and then she found her dream job finally. And so that's fully remote. And so I was just working doing client work. And then in like 2018, I was like, I think I'm ready to go back and work for somebody again. There's something about when you run your own company, you got to do it all.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I'm not saying I won't do that necessarily again at some point in the future, but I was like, man, you know what? I really like doing like certain tasks and like really just doing the job. And so I went back in and I went on the tech support side.
Mm-hmm.
I had done some support work when I was at GoDaddy way, way back, 2003, but that's really more of a sales job. And so this time I went back in like pure tech support. I went and worked at Pressable. I was there for like a year and a half. Learned a whole bunch. Learned WPCLI, SSH, um, uh, started to figure things out and started running across this company, Kinsta, because every time I would do a Google search for like a database error that was coming up, they would have a blog post that would that would fix the problem, right? Like it wasn't just like, oh yeah, here's the issue. They would actually like have the solution. And I was like, who is this company? Like they're just willing to give away all this information. And so I went and talked with them and started doing migrations for them. And yeah, I've been there for over 5 years now, fully remote position. We've since built a house. So now I've got like a dedicated office space. One of the things I learned about being on the road is that I really need a dedicated workspace
Yeah.
for a few reasons. The first one is I need to be focused. I'm already good enough at distracting myself. I need to limit as many distractions as possible. And then the other thing is, and this is like a bigger topic I think about remote work that maybe doesn't get discussed enough, is when I'm done working, I walk out the door and I close the door and work stays in that room.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, like making sure like you're delineating when you're working, when you're not working, and like because otherwise you go crazy, right? And
Yeah.
your family goes crazy too because they're like,
Yeah.
are you working right now or are you with us? Like what's
Yeah.
happening here? So remote work is great. I love it. I really don't know how I could work in an office again for future employers. I'm saying that tentatively because, the right offer or whatever. But I think just from a productivity perspective, I get up in the morning, I do my routine, I'm able to come into my office, do work. I can take a break, I can leave, I can do chores, I can come right back, I can do work. It's just so much more productive, so much more efficient. And all the people I work with, right? They're all over the world. Like at Kinsta, we're a fully remote company. It just doesn't make sense to have an office unless you really need that much of a permanent workspace, right, to go to or whatever. And I understand, like, not everybody has the luxury of having a room that they can dedicate as their office. So, like, going to a co-working space, I think that makes a ton of sense for if that's what works for you. But yeah, man, happy to talk about remote work anytime, all the
Yeah,
time.
I read these headlines about like from companies that are doing the return to office thing,
Yeah,
and I think about I worked in an office in a cubicle for a number of years at a couple different jobs,
yeah,
and then obviously and then I also my first setup at home was like the computers were just in the main open just in the living room with the kids, newborns and up until like they're 2 or 3 or something, and then and at a certain point I was like, okay, I need to not be in this space because I'm not good for them and I'm not good for me,
mm,
and so I moved my office into the bedroom, and that was kind of janky, but it was better because I could close the door, and
mm,
having that space was a big improvement.
yeah,
But I think about like going into the office and working in a cubicle job, and the amount of just playing flash games uh, on office time.
Tower
Like
defense,
yeah, well,
tower
that
defense.
and among other things, there was a role playing one that I was really into, and I wish that I remember the name of it. It was a flash game where you like had a hero and you could get equipment and just go through and fight monsters and stuff, and you would level up and get better stuff and go to different areas. It was amazing.
Sweet.
Um, and I wish I remember, and I played so much of that. And I think about like, yeah, you're saying that I'm more productive in the office because I guess you can look over my shoulder. Like I literally don't understand that because I know that when I'm at the computer at home, this is the only thing that I'm thinking about. And especially like starting off doing freelancing, every minute that I'm not spending doing my job, I am not making money.
Yeah,
So like I am a lot more incentivized to get stuff done. And then like you said, like having a dedicated space that you can just walk away from and then like, okay, I'm done with this whole thing now. Like
yeah.
is a really powerful thing for remote employees. But yeah, I don't understand the return to office thing because I will say like there's the water cooler thing, whatever, and I will say like um, I worked for Albertsons for a number of years, doing like off tech support for their their stores. They had Windows servers and Unix servers, and I supported the Windows servers. And in our umbrella, we also did support for photo kiosks, which they were putting out into and it was kind of early-ish days of photo kiosks. Now
Okay.
you see them; they're pretty common. And I think they're pretty much all like Canon now. But we had our own system that we had built and hired like these Romanian developers to build out the software.
Yeah.
And so we had in-house engineers literally across the hall. So, and this is actually where I sort of learned that one of my superpowers is being able to translate programmer speak into normal English, and why I like doing developer relations because it's a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I would be on the phone with somebody who's very, very tech phobic, right? Who has customers in a line at this photo kiosk and it's not working. And I would go across the hall to the developers and say, this is what's happening. And they would say, okay, this is where you get into the MS SQL database and you can see what's going on, whatever. And this is the problem. And then I would take that and I'd go over there. Okay. And then I would translate that into English and say, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And that was definitely like nice to be able to
Yeah.
walk across the room, but like, I don't need to walk across the room if I can just send them a Slack message, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. You know, and I think that's really interesting, right? To talk about the dynamic, right? Because there is kind of this nostalgia, I think, of what office work was or is, right? And there's this nostalgia of like, oh yeah, no, it's where we all come together and it's kumbaya and we're able to be synergistic. And I'll tell you my experience when I was in the office, right? When I was at GoDaddy, you had a key card, right? And the key card, depending on who you were, opened certain doors.
oh no,
And so, since I was sales support, it meant most of the doors did not open. And so, there was no chance I could go and talk to a developer.
yeah, yeah,
Right. And in fact, they like actively, they did not want you talking to the developers. And so I think back on my experience working in offices and all the time that these people are like, oh, but you know, this is where the mentorship happened. And I'm like, yeah, I worked in offices for years and there was no mentorship happening. Like, you know, the only mentorship that was happening were these like toxic relationships where like I was being intimidated and whatnot. And so, you know, I hear the words, I understand what they're saying and the benefits of that. I think we can have all of that in a remote situation. And I think there's a lot of delusion over how much of this mentorship and all of these synergistic things were happening. You know, maybe for a few people, yes, right? Like a few people were able to get the CEO to take interest in them, but the majority of us are not getting that attention. And so, you know, I can now on Slack, I can DM my CEO whenever I want.
hmm
He doesn't always respond, but you know, no, that's not, I'm kidding. He totally does. I try and be, you know, not. I try to understand that he's got a lot of people messaging him, right?
yeah, for
And
sure.
so with remote work, we do lose this thing with the in-person contact though, and
Yeah,
I do. You know, and so that is one of the things we're doing better about is having like remote meetups. Of course, I started right during the pandemic, right? And
right.
like, you know, everything got wiped out for a couple of years. We've been coming back with the in-person meetups. I try and make whenever I go to like WordCamps, I try and get other people who are nearby to join in and meet. So like WordCamp EU's coming up. We'll have a whole bunch of people there. And so we'll get that ability to meet people face to face for at least a little bit.
hmm
And I think now with it in a remote situation, I think I appreciate those situations so much more now, right? Because I'm like, oh yeah, I know you really well from Slack, but you know,
hmm
obviously I don't know your sense of humor. I don't know like what tone you're actually
Yeah,
talking to me in.
yeah,
And so it's weird. There's a lot of balance going on, but I think you know, kind of segueing or jumping all over again. My sister works for a very large corporation, and they went fully remote from the pandemic, and then now they've slowly started coming back. I think she's doing 2 days a month back at the office, and it's absurd, right? She goes into this office, she sits down at her computer, she gets on a Zoom call with somebody in a different state.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess you need to justify paying for the office space or something.
Yes.
I don't really get
Yes.
it. I do know, like, again, from sort of from personal experience, like there are significant challenges, particularly when you're in a distributed team across time zones, across continents. Um, does What have you found that helps negotiate that sort of challenge of, like, we just literally have difficulties being in the same Slack rooms at the same times? How do you or how does Kinsta sort of handle that?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate. Before I even got to Kinsta, the async culture was something that was being talked about and promoted heavily, right? And so this is where you as an individual need to make sure you have an understanding that other people at the company have other things that they're working on, right? Like this is stuff that we should have anyway, right? But I
Yeah.
think in a remote situation, you really have to like make sure that you're embodying this mentality of when I reach out to Sam or Nicole, right, for something, they might not be ready to like work on that or read that message at that moment, right? And I have to make sure I make the call of how important, how soon do I need them to respond to this? Right? If it's a server outage, right? Like that's obviously a all hands on deck. We need to get this thing resolved. If it's a I need you to review my vacation request time or I need you to like review my strategy planning for the next 6 months, like there's wiggle room and we need to have more understanding of that. And so
Yeah.
Kinsta does a really great job. This is why I really enjoy many reasons I enjoy working at Kinsta, but like this async culture first, we've really adopted it, right? We didn't invent it, like lots of companies do this, but we've really adopted it at our core from the top down, right? So leadership down understands that async first, and especially since we're a distributed company around the globe, like it's really important that we understand that because if I'm messaging somebody who's in Asia, they're asleep usually
Yeah.
when I'm working.
Yep.
And so I need to know like there's going to be a delay to that response. And so, how can I package the question, right? Am I doing a good job of like, can I just go ahead and create like a Google Doc with the
Mm.
whole plan in there for them to review so that we're not necessarily doing a death by a thousand cuts back and forth. We're just kind of looking at everything at once. And then based on how that's all working, now you need to decide, okay, does it make sense for us to have an in-person or, not an in-person, but an actual meeting so that we can talk, we can get get our tones like, hey, can I figure out like, hey, Chris, are you really excited about this project or is this like really tooth pulling for you? Like I think it's helpful sometimes to get that. But you've got to work async first. You've got to try to work through whether it's Slack or whatever communication program you're using. You've got to be good, trying to be really good at communicating through that first. And then when there's holdups or roadblocks or whatever, switching to other forms of communication. I love video communication. I know a lot of people get very uncomfortable with video, and I understand completely why. Like not everybody like is necessarily comfortable on a camera. What I would urge everybody to do is get over that first of all. Like you've got to. I mean, if you had an office job, you would have to go and see
Mm-hmm.
people in the office.
Yep.
When you're remote working, you don't necessarily need to get all dressed up and crazy. But like, try and take care of yourself, make yourself presentable. I think having a good video setup, right? I don't think you have to spend a ton of money on microphones. You need to spend some money on lighting. Like just the number of people that have their window behind them and
Mm.
their face
Mm-hmm.
is just black.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've got to stop this. This is what kills remote work. Like jokingly, but also somewhat seriously. It's like I need to see your face because most of human communication is nonverbal,
Yeah.
and so I
And that
need to be
gets
able to.
lost in Slack.
don't even try. I mean, that's the other thing. Like people try and be sarcastic in text, right? The internet, like
Hmm.
don't try and use sarcasm on the internet unless you want to like cause an argument. Um, like you need to be as tone neutral as possible in text, and then if there's an actual issue, that's what a video calls for. Is like,
Yeah.
hey, I need you to understand, like you're really annoying me right now, without saying that, right? And
Yeah.
so, and then the other person needs to be really good at picking up on those cues, right? Like, if the person's not turning on their camera, that's a personal option. I get it. Not everybody wants to be on camera. Um, so that's already telling me something, maybe a little bit, that they're not necessarily comfortable for whatever reason. And just like, so I think, to get back to your original question, like how do we handle human communication as a remote company? It's complicated, right?
Yeah.
But you've got to be proactive about it. And I don't know, how do you handle it? How does Pantheon handle this?
Pantheon originally was a in the office sort of thing with a couple people that would work remotely, but most people were in one of a couple different offices in different places, and then went fully remote for COVID. I joined after that, um, and it's still so. Like I said, I've worked at a couple different things. Human Made. I was at Human Made for a little more than 4 years. Um, and we actually did while I was there, a virtual conference about remote work,
No.
and invited people from like Basecamp and like other places that were doing remote work to talk about what like the best practices were. And I feel like because Human Made was remote first, like they were in an office for a minute, but once it was larger than Joe and Tom, and they started hiring people, I think they pretty much went remote from day 10 or something.
Okay.
Um, they they really dug into what does it mean to be a remote, and so I feel like they did a lot of things right. And one of the things that they did um, was have followed the automatic example of using P2s for
Mm,
everything.
mm,
P2 is a blogging. It's a theme really for WordPress, but the main thing is that it's has a front end editor and comments and threaded comments, and none of this stuff is unique or special now. But at the time, it was really like live updating, and the idea was you could kind of do a Twittery kind of thing on your blog, and then it kind
mm-hmm.
of got adapted for this sort of thing. Now all the make blogs use a variation of this thing.
Yeah.
And so whenever there was a project, whenever each of the sort of departments had a P2, projects had P2s, all communication happened in P2, so that was the place that you went to look for stuff, so that you weren't doing all of your communication over Slack. I like to think of Slack as not asynchronous, because there is just so much mental overhead in trying to catch up with the back scroll, that it's not asynchronous. I mean, you'd like to, people like to think that it is,
Yeah.
because there is like a log, but it's just impossible to keep up with all the things that are happening, especially when a company gets above a certain size. I think Pantheon, um, there honestly there's still struggles. There's things that I think Human Made was doing right that Pantheon still kind of needs to learn.
Okay.
One of the things too that like you mentioned as well is getting together in person, and that's a thing that we're still trying to figure out. We kind of do it a little bit in like team size meetups, but like Human Made did a whole company wide thing, and I that it's hard to undersell, or it's hard to oversell, I should say, the value of getting everyone together in person, so that everyone can, so that you are rubbing up against people that you would not interact with normally, whether that's because of a time zone difference or departmental difference or whatever, because that then carries over into your Slack conversations, like you said. Like, I'm not going to understand what a person's humor is like, what their tone is like, but if I see them in person, then I have that context, and when I see them online next, then I come into that interaction with that context.
Sure.
Um, and that it's like I said, it's hard to oversell the value of that. I think that's a thing that every remote team needs to figure out how to make happen. and make happen in different ways than just we're going to get this team together, we're going to get that team together. It needs to really be cross-functional because you're working with more than just the people on your team. You're
Yeah.
working with people across, and it's usually, in my experience, and particularly a thing that again I see a lot at Pantheon, the difficulties in communication are often between departments, between teams that are already embedded in the way that they do things.
Yeah.
And that is why it's even more important to have all of those people in a space, a physical space together, so that they can figure out like just how to communicate with people.
Yeah.
And that's huge. It's a very human thing, and we try to pretend like we can do this online only thing and use things like Zoom or video calls and whatever to make up for the in person stuff. But really, there is a necessary part of working with other humans that needs to happen in person. It doesn't have to be all the time, but there
Yeah.
does need to be something.
No, so yeah, jumping on the bandwagon here, I think we're both in agreement that in-person meetups, like we just need to have them. Whether
Yeah.
it's once a year, I think at least once a year, right,
least,
would
yeah.
be just get everybody together and then get the teams to mix together, right? Like mix things up because the siloing, right? What I'm hearing from you and what I experience as well is the siloing of departments. And everybody's got their own missions, they've got their own OKRs, KPIs, whatever you're using. And the problem becomes that they don't necessarily those things don't interact.
Yeah.
But we still need people to interact. We still need the people to work together. And so I wonder if there's like do we have a new acronym we need to come up with for either not an OKR, not a KPI, but like some sort of a measurement system that figures out how well departments are talking to each other and working with each other. And, maybe that's just something that gets incorporated into our OKRs and KPIs, but it is shocking, like, how much like one team is working on something that just obviously makes sense. Like this work could be doing some work with another team. But we're just not using it. We're not even aware that each other's got these systems going, these tools in place. Like I'm using software that other teams aren't even like they're just discovering. And I'm like, oh, I would have told you about that a year ago. You just had to ask.
Yeah.
And maybe I need to do a better job of broadcasting internally. We don't do a P2 type system. We have Confluence, which is not a good.
Confluence is a mess.
I love the idea of Confluence. I love the
Yeah.
ideas of these knowledge platforms, but then the actual use of them,
Yeah.
it just like why can't we figure out things? I love Slack and I hate Slack. I love email and I hate email. I love social media and I hate social media, but these are all tools that I use for managing all of this. And I want to jump back real quick to your comment about Slack, not being async. And I'll agree with you that the human instinct, right, is as soon as you see that notification, right, you see the bubble, right? And I've even changed all my colors,
the
right?
bubble.
I've
Yeah.
even changed all my colors. I don't use the traditional colors, like the notification bubble is not red because red makes me like super intense. I think it's green or something benign. But like human instinct is, oh, I need to answer this right now as soon as you see it, right? And so I get really good. And I think this is where the mobile app for Slack is better than the desktop app. Because in the mobile app, you can go through your threads, right? And you can choose mark as read or reply, right? Or you can just leave it. And I love just leaving it because I'll check things first thing in the morning. I'll just kind of skim, hey, is the CEO reaching out? Is like a customer reaching out? Like these are like really important messages I need to respond to. Whereas like almost everything else can wait. And so I have to like, so I've got all these weird systems, right? Like I've got Slack reminders, but then I keep ignoring those, and there's so many bad habits that get built out of trying to like manage all of this, and then I'm part of too many channels for sure. And then we're creating new channels all the time. It's a challenge. I don't have any concrete answers for you, but I can tell you I've got kind of a system that works. Nobody seems to be upset with me for how I handle my Slack stuff. But I think, again, it's kind of like how I have to compartmentalize all of work into an office. We need to get better at, I know I need to get better at compartmentalizing like email. Okay, I'm going to check email only a couple of times a day. Slack, I'm only going to check Slack a couple of times a day. If somebody really needs me, they can DM me. But if they start DMing me too much, then like I'll just let them know. I'm like, man, you DM me too much or something. I'm not always that comfortable. Like with my bosses, obviously I can't say that, but there is a challenge here. I think that these are good challenges to have, right? I think getting back to the original premise of like remote work, like this is still so much more productive than any office work that I've ever done. And I think it's definitely on us. It's on the workers to be more interactive in a remote work situation, because it is really easy for me to just sit here and goof off because nobody's watching. But eventually, people are going to figure this out. Eventually, they're going to realize, like, hey, you're not doing stuff, and then changes will happen. So, man, I tell you what, it's a pinch yourself moment. I'm pinching myself to have the position I'm at. I'm pinching myself that I get to work remote. I remember being a kid and being like, oh man, what a dream. You could just sit at home and work. And like, that was like in the 90s, 80s and 90s, like that was such a fantasy. And now it's just such a fact of life for so many people. But we need to work on it, right? We need to not just like rest on our laurels and be like, oh yeah, remote work's here, we've got it all figured out. Like, no, there's constant improvement. Because I remember being at Pressable, right? That was a part of Automatic, and that we had our P2s. But the problem then is participation, right? If nobody's writing in the P2s, then
Right.
they're not really effective. And so there was some of that issue that I ran into when I was there. So I don't know, an interesting thing, and I'm going to keep sucking up all the air here for just a little longer. One interesting thing we did at Kinsta early on when I got there is we had these Kinsta culture projects. And so this is something where anybody that works at the company can come up with an idea, run it by HR, of course, make sure it's not, going to violate anything or anything like that. But so like the first one I did 100 days of blogging, right? In the middle of the pandemic, I was like, hey, first of all, we work at a company that we host blogs. Like, we should all be blogging more.
Yep.
And so we did a 100-day blogging challenge, and we had a few people participate. It wasn't a huge number, but we had somebody set up a book club, and I created a computer club, a place just to talk about general computer stuff. And I think, and that was one thing I remembered from being at Automatic with the P2s, right? There would be these like subcultures within the company. And I think that that's really a fascinating way, because you also get that cross-functional, cross-departmental connections that can occur. So just trying to figure out a way to facilitate all of that. It's a full-time job in itself, though.
Yeah. Yeah. For real. Well, thank you, Roger, for coming on. I feel like we could be chatting for a million years, so I'll have to get the hook for now. But
Yeah.
love to have you on again in the future. Do you have links or anything that you're promoting? What events? What does your calendar look like over the summer and into the fall this year?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So from a Kinsta side of things, we've got WordCamp Europe coming up. We've got all the WordCamps. We've got WordCamp US. So those I'd love to see people there. Always stop by and say hi to me. I'm interrupt any conversation I'm having. It's it's all surface level. Links, so Kinsta.com, great. Yeah, go there. But then personally, so I've got my own blog is rogerwilliamsmedia.com. I've kind of just restarted that recently. And so I'm just having fun there, just kind of riffing on different subjects and topics, and seeing how much AI can make me sound maybe a little bit more intelligent. So it's definitely AI assisted work there. VegPress. You mentioned VegPress at the beginning of the conversation. So we're working on getting VegPress kind of organized for WordCamp Europe if this comes out by then. Otherwise, it's too late. But then for WordCamp US, I'm working on. I think the idea is going to be we'll just have like a big party, and all of the food that is catered for it just happens to be vegan,
Nice.
which also would make it kosher. And and then we'll have like some like gluten free. So to me, the idea with Veg Press is it's just people that've got dietary kind of restrictions or choices, and they just need like a group that can kind of help empathize with them.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
And we're not, and it's not like necessarily trying to indoctrinate people, but I mean, we are, but we're not, but I mean, but we are, but anyway. But yeah, and then I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So feel free to find me on LinkedIn and say hi and chat, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on. This is the first recording. I don't think it's gonna be the first episode, but early adopter for the Community and Code podcast, and lovely chatting with you.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to see where this goes, and yeah, man,
Me too.
I'll see you again soon.